Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101. Today is about JavaScript statements. Okay, we're going to learn some very useful stuff here today. First of all, I want to tackle the concept of values. In JavaScript, there are two values, like most programming languages, fixed values and variable values. Fixed values are called literals. They are, as the name suggested, fixed. Variable values are variable. And you can also change variables, meaning you can actually change the name of the variable. Therefore, the values are actually variable, right? Changeable. Here are some examples of what literals look like. We have numbers, float, binary, integer, and then another float. And we have strings as well, which you can define with double quotes or single quotes. Now, onto variables, which is a bit more complex compared to literal. In order to declare a variable, you need the word var, let, and const. Var declare a variable, let declare a block variable, and const declare a constant variable, which this one you cannot change. The equal sign, this is called the assignment operator, is used to assign values to variables. Let x, so we've declared x. X equals to hello, we've defined x, okay? We've assigned a value to it. And the same thing with const y equals to 5. Moving on to operators, we have arithmetic operators to compute values. So we're talking addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, to the power of. There are a lot more, but they are just, the same sets that you would expect in Python. It is applicable to JavaScript. And assignment operator, don't forget, it's not the equal sign. It is to assign value. So it's not, 2 plus 2 equals to 4. It doesn't work like that. Let A, B, C. A is A, B is B, C is C. And here's the thing, with a lot of languages, some specifically ask you to assign a value to a variable the moment it is created, the moment it is declared. However, with JavaScript, you can declare an empty variable and then assign values to it later, okay? So this is a property that some languages have and some don't. So do keep that in mind. Moving on to expression. What is an expression? It is a combination of values, variables, and operators. A computation, for example, is an evaluation. So 5 times 5 evaluates to 25. And an expressions can have various elements as well. So you're combining a string, and string. The same thing with integers, 5 plus 5 plus 7, whatever you want. So that's an expression. It's a combination of values, variables, and operators. And an evaluation is a computation. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about case. JavaScript is case sensitive. So X here is different from X here. These are considered two different entities, okay? And when it comes to the capitalization for the variable name, you can do underscore first name, or you can do upper camel case or Pascal case first name, or you can do lower camel case first name. This one is the most popular. This one is the one that you see the most. But these two work too, okay? You can offer these, although it's not, you will rarely see them. We're back again with our JavaScript 1 file. Today, I want to demonstrate that the case sensitivity of the names of variables in JavaScript. If I try using C and using A, and then I have another A here, which is 10. And another C here, which is 20. And when I print this out, document get element by ID, print 1 inner HTML, D plus C times AB is going to be wholly different. Okay, it's going to be using this A and this C instead of this A and this C. And we can have an alternative. So let's delete this part. D plus C times A times B. And when I click on click me, we still have the cake is velvet, so we're not bothered with that. Try me, these are two completely different numbers, okay? So the first one is bigger, obviously, because the A is 10 and the C is like 20. And 37 is way smaller because we're just working with, 2 and 4. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Next lesson is going to be about comments, making your code friendlier. So do tune in and have a wonderful day. Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101, JavaScript statements. We're going to learn about, what is a JavaScript statement? What are the different syntaxes? Mainly, we're just going to get used to how JavaScript looks like in Visual Studio Code or whatever code editor that you have. Semicolons. Semicolons are very important to JavaScript, unlike Python, Django, or CSS or HTML for that matter. With HTML, you have the opening tag and the closing tag, right? With CSS, you have the brackets, the curly brackets. With Python, you have the spacing. For JavaScript, it is the semicolon. The semicolons separate JavaScript statements. And you can also do multiple statements on one line by using the semicolon, okay? Let A, B, C, so we're declaring A, B, C, and then we're assigning values to them. A equals 2, B equals to true, and C equals to Z plus Y. Now, just like HTML, you can miss a closing tag, for example. And with JavaScript, you can miss a semicolon as well. That's not recommended because it's going to be quite weird. The more you code, the more stuff you add into your JavaScript file. It's going to get really confusing because JavaScript doesn't, really know where a statement might begin or where it might end if you lack the proper semicolon. So it's necessary to add it. Next up to white space. So JavaScript ignores multiple spaces, unlike Python or Django. Very similar to HTML. So you can make your code friendlier this way. So let character equals to A and let character equals to A. Both of these are the same thing. And to JavaScript, there's no difference. Let's talk about code blocks. Code blocks are basically a group of code, right? And you can group them together using the curly bracket. Now, why? Why do you need to do this? You can easily define statements that are executed together. And one of the popular, block of codes, they're called functions. And functions have this exact format. Functions are just basically blocks of code. Okay? They're code blocks. I have an example here. Function, my function, document, get element by ID. So you just use, whatever ID of the HTML element that you want to change. Enter HTML, put this phrase into the HTML file, hello world. Basically what this function does is that it prints hello world in the HTML file that it is linked to or it is in. However, just by writing this alone, it's not going to make it work. Remember, you need to call the function either by a button or you declare the call manually. Moving on to keywords. Keywords is something that you need to pay attention to, specifically when you name variables. Since they are reserved words, they do not qualify as variable name. It'll be flagged as an error, or JavaScript will get really confused because it thinks that the name of the variable is actually, a method or a statement that needs to be executed. But how are you going to execute a variable, right? Now, these are one of the few, nonetheless very important, keywords that you need to keep in mind. Var is for declaring variable, Let declares a block variable, const, declare a constant variable. If is for if and else statements. Switch, execute in different cases. This is quite similar to if, but it's, highly conditional. Sorry, not highly conditional. If and else is highly conditional. Switch is, as the name suggests, it just switch things around, switch codes, depending on which condition is true. For is for loop. Function, as we've learned, just a code block, declares a function. Got it again with our HTML main file. I'm going to make some changes. This one is no longer for cake. Let's just try click me. We're keeping it as general as possible. And instead of cake, I'm going to have print 2. And up here, print 1. Alright, so my function over here will go by print 2 and no longer cake. And this one, let's go ahead and document.getElementById, print 1 dot inner HTML equals to hello, I guess. Let's use hello as a placeholder for now. The focus of this lesson is about a bunch of variables, and we're going to be creating them, declaring them, and assigning values, and we will try printing them as well as performing some arithmetic calculation on them. So now I'm going to escape out of the function and let A, B, and C. A equals to, let's say 2, B equals to 3, and C equals to 4. And D equals to A plus B, so we should have 5. Instead of this, instead of hello, let's try printing out D, alright? Make no mistake, you can write all of these on the same line as well. It is made possible using the semicolon, and I'm going to try that. Phrase 1 equals to I love chocolate. And then phrase 2 is I love strawberry. And then let's print these out. Document get element by ID. And we're going to go with print 2 since we're not using print 2. Inner HTML equals to phrase 1 plus phrase 2. Now if you click on click me, we still have the cake is velvet because we haven't changed the code. If you click on try me, you get the answer of 5, and then I love chocolate and I love strawberry. However, there's no spacing between the two, and that looks awkward, so let's change that. I'm going to add a spacing in between them. Let's run this again. Try me. I love chocolate and I love strawberry. And you can do whatever you want with these. You can, try D. Let's add D to C. So we're adding 5 to 4, and then we can times it by 2, and then times it by B 3 as well. And for the phrase 1, phrase 2, you can certainly add a lot in front of them. However, you cannot add string to integers, okay? But if the integer is in the form of a string, then you absolutely can. Try me. So this is what we have. We have 29. And then, as you can see, I just put a lot of nonsense in between these, and they still work fine. And this is expressed as a string, not as an integer. So you can pair them up, pair 5 with strings. However, you cannot do any sort of calculations using this number 5 over here. Okay? That's very neat, isn't it? You can go back and forth. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Next up, we're going to be dealing with JavaScript syntax. So I do hope that you'll tune in. Have a wonderful day. Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101. Today's lesson is about displaying output. Okay, so printing stuff. Let's move on to the first part, display data, the different ways that you can print out something. And we're just talking strings, we're talking integers, and mathematical operations as well. So 5 plus 6, for example. You can also print Boolean values, true or false. You can also print float as well, 4.2, 8.5. There are four main ways that you can print out such values. The first one, and the most popular one, is inner HTML, albeit its syntax is way longer than the rest. You have document write, which is self-explanatory. Window alert, this one is for a pop-up on your browser, so not necessarily just a bunch of text on the screen. Console log, this one is more so for development, right, for production, rather than something that you'd want to put in your final product. Let's tackle inner HTML first. So this is the code that we're working with. Up here is the HTML part. And in HTML, I have a paragraph with ID change, as well as div with change. And in the script section, the JavaScript section, document get element by ID change. So it is just as it is saying, it gets the element, the HTML element, via ID change. So it gets the P and it gets the div. Inner HTML, so inserted into the HTML, the B is now hungry, okay? In the case of P, we already have the little b is drinking. So once the JavaScript is executed, this line right here will be replaced by the bee is now hungry. As for div, since it has nothing in it at all, it's just going to have the bee is now hungry. There will be no replacements, okay? Next up to document.write. Document.write, like console log, is mainly for testing, and it makes it really, really convenient. And very simply, document.write, the dog walked in the park. Now, it's not going to replace any HTML element, okay? It's not going to do anything like that. It's just going to put the dog walked in the park right on your browser. It's just going to put it right there in the HTML file. Now, one thing with document.write is that it will delete all existing HTML. That's why it's very useful for testing and not for production. For example, I have the HTML element P, the mice is looking for the cheese, and I have a button, okay? Since we have a button, we don't need to put the script tag. We can just insert the JavaScript syntax, just right in there. Button, type button, on click, meaning when you click on it, execute document.write 4+4, click, closing the button. So you will have a little button that says click, and when you click on it, the mice is looking for the cheese will be replaced with 8. As simple as that. Now to window.alert. Window.alert, again, like document.write, will delete all existing HTML. But given the name, it is an alert, so it's sort of like a pop-up, right? It's not a paragraph that's just going to be put into your HTML file. It's just going to little pop-up says this is an alert. Or you can alert 10 plus 15 equals to 25. You can use string, integers, floats, booleans. It's up to you to test it out. Last but not least, we have console log. It's for debugging purposes. We have the float, 3.5 plus 2.5. This will give us 5.5. And you can console log like that, and it just push it up there on your browser. Now, what about print? Because we've seen through Python, we've seen through Django, right? That there's always a neat little print method that we can use to print whatever we want. But JavaScript doesn't really have that. It doesn't have any print object or methods. Button, on click, window.print, print this, please. Button. That's it. I'm going to establish a new property of JavaScript that you may be interested. So for this div, I'm going to add something, just a bunch of nonsense, and I'm going to create another button. Type, button, okay, on click equals to replace div, okay. Try me. And then let's go to JavaScript number 1 and put this into a function. And we have to go with the correct function. Function name, replace div. So replace div. And then put this over here. In here. And now with our website, we have a bunch of nonsense over here. And if we click try me, we get hello world, right? And if we click me for cake, we get the cake is velvet. Now that we've linked the two scripts into our main.html file, let's go ahead and modify the first script. We're going to use the first script for testing, okay? We've already established that inner HTML can do its job of printing and replacing content very well. Now let's go ahead and try document write 2 plus 2, for example, okay? Now if you click on try me, you would get 4. However, notice that both of the buttons are gone. They should be there, okay? And this basically means that document write replaces everything in your HTML file. So it replaces everything that you've coded into your HTML file. Therefore, it is incredibly useful for testing, but obviously it has limited practicality when it comes to, releasing and like using it in the final products. How about we try document write in a button? So let's try this, the second one. And when you click on try me, you get the same results. So I'm going to go ahead and undo all of that. Make sure to save, go back to JavaScript 1, and let's move on with window alert. Click on this and you get an alert, okay? This page says alert. It's not going to print directly into the browser, and you can still have, your elements still in here. You can simply press OK to get rid of it. Keep in mind that you can get rid of the window.part completely and still retain the same results. Let me click try me, and it still works just as well. For debugging purposes, as I've mentioned, you can use console.log. Let's try a bunch of random numbers plus. Okay, instead of integer, how about we do it with floats? And don't forget the semicolon at the back here. You can go to inspect element and then head on to the console section. So I've already did a calculation over here, but you can clear console history and clear console just like that. Console.log, let's say 2.2 plus 3.6. We're going to go with floats instead of integer. And you're going to have the following result. Okay, so that's one way that you can use for debugging purposes. Last but not least, let's head on to the window.print method. Window.print. Last but not least, let's head on to the window.print method. And I'm going to go ahead, window.print. print this. When you reset the whole thing and you click on print this, it's going to give you this window over here, and you have the option to use your printer. Now that's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Next lesson is going to be about JavaScript statements. So do tune in, and I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Hello everyone, welcome to a new series, Tina Teach JavaScript 101. Today's lesson is about web integration, more so how JavaScript works. We're going to be taking a look at a few samples of JavaScript syntax and just sort of see how it all works together with HTML and CSS. Now I want to introduce to you a script tag. In an HTML file, you have a separate, section for CSS, which is marked by the opening tag style and the closing tag style. And it's the same for JavaScript. If you want to put JavaScript in the same file as HTML, you're going to have to surround the code with the script tag. Remember, open script tag and then closing script tag. Okay. For example, let's say that before and after is just a bunch of HTML code. In the middle, you can put script, document, get element by ID, demo, inner HTML, printing this sentence, and then closing the script tag. Now I'm going to explain what this code mean in a little bit, but just know for now that what this does is it puts or it print the sentence over here into the HTML file. Okay, let's move on to functions and events. A function is a block of code that's only executed when it is called. Okay, so if you write a bunch of code and you put it in a function, it will absolutely not work whatsoever. Not because it's wrong, it's just because you haven't called it. And what does it mean when you call a function? I'm going to explain that. I'm going to explain that in future lessons, okay? But for now, just know that the key when it comes to function is that you have to call it for it to be executed. And a function can be called when an event occurs, like clicking on a button. In the case with buttons, you can absolutely put a button in an HTML file, and you can attach a function to that button. So whenever you click on that button, in the browser, the function automatically runs. So you don't need to, call it manually. Next up, in placement, we're going to talk about the placement of the script tag, whether in the head or the body. You can choose, either. In the head, we have the style. That's where the CSS lie. You can group CSS and JavaScript together and just leave, the HTML for the last, if that's how you prefer to organize the three. Or you can do it, separately using an external JavaScript file and then link it to your HTML file. Similarly to how CSS can be a separate file and then you link it to the HTML file, you can do the same for JavaScript, okay? The nice thing with this is you don't have to have a single JavaScript file. It can be multiple files, all linked to one HTML file. Now, this may be a little bit inconvenient. Not really. But, if you don't really like opening multiple files at one time, so maybe it is a little bit inconvenient. But external JavaScript does offer you a higher level of clarity when it comes to developing your website. And you can link the JavaScript to an HTML file using script source, the name of your JavaScript file, .js, and then closing the script tag. Moving along to external advantage. What are the advantages of using external JavaScript file? As I've mentioned, if you separate the HTML and the JavaScript file, you have an easier time developing your website, first of all. And it is way easier and friendlier to maintain in the case of you coming back and forth, to adjust your website, make it better. And a cached JavaScript files can absolutely speed up website loading time. All right, and so that's one major advantage. And you can have multiple scripts integrated to one HTML file. All right, so there are many advantages, many pros that come with this. Last but not least, how can you reference an external JavaScript file? Now, I'm mentioning specifically about this statement right here. How can you reference, or the different ways, different values that you can use for the script tag in order to link the JavaScript file to the HTML file? You can do it using, the full URL. If the JavaScript file is online, you can just copy and paste that. Or you can use the file path, file path, for example, user, like document, JavaScript file, right? And then the name of your JavaScript file, for example, like myjsfile.js. Or you can simply go for just the file name if the HTML file and the JavaScript file is in the same folder. So you can just simply go for the name. So I have my HTML file over here, and you can go ahead and put the script tag either in the body tag or in the head tag. But as you can see, the head tag is a bit loaded right now, so I'm just going to put it in the body tag. Script, I'm closing. Let me change this from Django to HTML. And in the script tag, I'm going to print out something using inner HTML as an introduction. Document.getElementById over here, and let's use example. Inner HTML equals to hello world. Now, this is not going to print if we have no ID to put the inner HTML in. So I'm going to escape out of the script tag, go into the body tag, and create a div with the ID example. And I'm just going to leave it blank. So this is a quick example of how you can utilize JavaScript. Let's move on to a more complex examples, and then we're going to view the results after all of this. And I'm going to put the JavaScript in the head section, okay? So let's go down and have script. And in script, I'm going to create a function named myFunction. And then curly braces, document get element by ID, the same thing that you see previously. But now I'm going to use a new ID, and I'm going to name it, let's not go with examples, go with cake. Dot inner HTML equals to, the cake is velvet. Don't forget the semicolon. And then down here, let's create another div with the ID of cake and a button. A button so we can trigger the function, okay? The function is not going to do anything if we don't call it. And that's going to be something that I'll expand in future lessons. But for now, let's just go ahead, type button on click my function, and then the brackets. Let's close it, click me for cake. As you can see over here, we have our hello world just like we coded, and then we have our little button, click me for cake. The cake is velvet. Okay, so that's one neat thing with JavaScript. It makes our website much more dynamic. And you can achieve the same result if you use external files. I'm going to create two new JavaScript files. So javascript1.js, and then another one, javascript2.js. They're going to do the exact same thing. And if everything goes well, it's going to be the same website that I've just demonstrated. So let's go to JavaScript 1, open with Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to copy some of the code in the main.html file onto the JavaScript 1 JavaScript file. Let's copy this one first. Okay. Put it in here. Let's remove the script because if you're in the JavaScript file, you do not need the script tag. And then let's go ahead and open up JavaScript 2. And I'm going to copy up here the function. Let's delete the script tags in the head section. We need to keep the two divs along with the button, okay? Because we need to be able to call the function. Now, it is not done, just like we did with style sheet, our style.css file. We need to link both of these into the main.html file. So in head, let's go with script one more time and source. Since this file and the other two are in the same folder, we don't need to go full path. We just need to type in the name. And the same thing with JavaScript 2. JavaScript 2. Okay, and then make sure to, oops, my bad, make sure to close it. I'm going to establish a new property of JavaScript that you may be interested. So for this div, I'm going to add something, just a bunch of nonsense, and I'm going to create another button. Type, oops, button, okay, on click equals to replace div, okay. Try me. And then let's go to JavaScript number 1 and put this into a function. And we have to go with the correct function, function name, replace div. So replace div. And then put this over here. And now with our website, we have a bunch of nonsense over here. And if we click try me, we get hello world, right? And if we click me for cake, we get the cake is velvet. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for watching, and I really do appreciate it. Since you watched until the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Next lesson is going to be JavaScript output, so stay tuned and have a wonderful day.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101. Today's lesson is about comments. First off, let's move to the next slide. I want to explain the purpose of the comments before we move on to other topics like the different syntax and different types of comments. Comments helps provide explanation for blocks of codes. Sometimes it's hard to understand a code straight up, so you can just read one or two lines of comments that would tell you what this code does, and it's easy peasy like that. Because usually when it comes to programming, you do it with a team. And this person code this, that person code that. It's hard to keep track of everything, so that's where comments come in. And comments can also be used as a testing alternative by preventing execution. I will mention later that anything within a comment will be ignored by JavaScript or any programming language for that matter. Same with HTML, same with CSS, same with Python, same with C, whatever. Because of that, you can easily just put a block of code between two comment syntax and work on another one down below as a form of testing. Moving on to the first type of comment, a single line. So any lines between these two, after these two will be ignored. For example, I put two dashes here and then I have my comment, and it is only valid to the end of the line, okay? Once you move down here, once you have a new line, the comment stop being in effect. Let's move on to multi-line. Multi-line is quite similar to single line in terms of syntax, but you have this little asterisk, this little star. And these two mark the beginning and end of a comment, so you don't have to worry about end of line. And this will allow for new line. As you can see here, this will make it easier for you to insert multiple sentences without starting each new line with a single line comment. So instead of doing 1, 2, do the comment, another 1, 2, do the comment, you can just do this very easy. And JavaScript will not touch this at all. It will only look at the code down here. And the code down here is declaring variables and assigning a value to them. Boolean value of true to y. Let's move back here. If you remember the first lesson, document get element by ID, inner HTML, hello world. This is printing a content into an HTML element with the ID. And this is declaring another variable and assigning it the integer 8. Now, moving on to preventing execution. So I have a bunch of code over here. We use the single line comment first and 2 dashes all the way to the end of line. I don't have enough space here, so let's just consider this one the end of line. JavaScript will not touch this whatsoever. It will not be executed. However, this one in the new line will be. Unlike the multi-line, for multi-line you can do new line, you can hop here, hop there, and as long as you open and close properly, anything between these two will not be touched.
We're gonna go ahead and have document.getElementById, and then we're gonna print into print1 inner HTML. I'm gonna go ahead and have today is a nice day with a smiley face, and then down here in the comments I'm going to write the exact same thing, document.getElementById, copy and paste, but I'm going to change the phrase a little bit. So obviously the first part is going to be executed, while the part that's after the single line comment syntax is not going to be, because remember, JavaScript ignores comment. Now we have a variable, we declare it automatically, x equals to high, and then y we declare it using the let keyword. As for a constant, the constant z, it is a comment, so it's not gonna, it's not gonna be affected. And for the multi-line comment, this is how you can implement it in your code. There's no need to bother, with new line or spacing. There are no such requirements. You can just write however you want. And it's very useful to make your code friendlier, right? And obviously, you can also put JavaScript expressions within these multi-line comments, as I've done here with document.getElementById. And I go to a new line, inner HTML. This is the second print. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for joining me and watching into the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for JavaScript variables. Have a wonderful day. Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101 Let. Now let's explore what let is and its different nuances compared to var. Let variables have a block scope. They must be declared before use, and they cannot be redeclared. So keep in mind these 3 main points. Variables declared using the let keyword have a block scope, and they must be declared before use. They cannot be redeclared, meaning that you cannot go let x, for example, after you've already said let x or let x equals to 5. Moving on to block scope. What exactly is
block scope. So block scope refers to the accessibility of variables. In this case, a variable declared inside of a curly bracket cannot be accessed from outside of the curly bracket. The curly bracket in this case defines a section of scope or accessibility that's separate from the global scope. Global scope meaning the whole file. If something is in the global scope, you can use it anywhere. You can use it in the whole file. The moment you use two curly brackets, you've basically created a little world within a big world. You can think of it like a house. Obviously, you cannot just waltz into any house and just take whatever is yours, because that's someone else's house. And you can think of scope the exact same way. For example, this is a scope now. That is the extent of a scope. Let x equals to true. Now, x cannot be used here. If you have a function that requires x, that function will probably return an error because it cannot access x. Neither if you put the function down here. All right, so x is only available in this little house that is contained by two curly brackets. Cannot be redeclared. I'm gonna, define this a little bit more. Let's say let x equals to true. So that's the first instance of x, and we've already assigned it a value. Now, if we write it again, that would be redeclaration. Let x equals to false. This will give you an error, naturally. Like, you cannot do such a thing with let, and JavaScript won't let you. However, if you replace let with var, that's completely okay. That's completely doable. Moving on to redeclaring variables. This is part 1, all right? Using var can be problematic when you are dealing with block scope. So this is our scope. That's the extent of our scope, if it's a little bit hard for you to see. Var x equals to 4. Now, naturally, we're using var. We can redeclare a variable, but we cannot use it outside of the scope. If x is equals to 1 at the top, and then bypassing through the scope, x equals to 4. Below here, x will be 4. As you can already imagine, if you're dealing with thousands and thousands of lines of code, how can you keep track of this? How can you keep track where a block scope is? And if you have multiple block scope lines up, then x will constantly be changing value. This introduces so much unpredictability into your file. However, let is here to help. Let x equals to high. By passing through the scope, x is still high. So whatever happens within your neighbor's house, whatever happens within this block scope stays in this block scope and is only accessible like so in this block scope. Moving on to same block redeclaring. Now this may look, a little bit confusing because of the syntax and the way it's, the way it is coded, but let me just highlight this a little bit. So we have two block scopes lined next to each other, two sections. var x equals to 10. So x is, let's not consider this. Let's not consider the second part. Let's just deal with the first part. X equals to 10 and x is declared by var. This is okay. That is allowed. And if you redeclare x again using the let keyword, that's okay as well. And then if you declare it again in another block scope using let, that's also okay. Just make sure if x here is 10 and x here is 20, this is 20 and this is 10. However, let's look at the second example. Let x equals to 55. So already starting, we cannot redeclare. And then we redeclare one more time in a block scope. That's not okay. And it is still not okay on any number of, block scopes that you put in. So as long as it's variable, let, that's okay. But starting with let first is a no-no. Moving on to variable x equals to high. And I'm going to create a completely, different section, different scope with variable x equals to 10. And we're actually going to see how, this will play out and what value x does get. So document.getElementById by ID and our inner HTML and x, and as we can see, it is 10. So I'm going to change this a little bit, and I'm going to use phrase hello world, and I'm going to make it let instead of var, and the same goes down here. Let phrase equals to hi there. And we're going to change the x into phrase and see how this all goes. We have a hello world instead of hi there. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in and watching until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and tune in to cons. See you next time. Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teaches JavaScript 101. Today's lesson is about cons or constant. First of all, let's clarify it. Let's focus on 3 main points. Variables defined by cons cannot be redeclared. So just like let cannot be redeclared, cannot be reassigned, and have a block scope. In this case, very, very similar to let. Okay, very, very similar. Cannot reassign the first part. One of the 3 parts. Let's talk about it. We have a number here that's already been declared by cons, and if we write number again, which is basically redeclaring, we would get an error. And if we redeclare it again by using its value to append to another value or evaluates to another value, that is still an error. So absolutely you cannot reassign. And it must be assigned. Now, what does this mean? Must be assigned meaning that you have to give it a value the moment it is created. So const number equals to 10.3. So you declare it, you assigned it. Declare assign. In the same expression. That's okay. That's how it's supposed to be done. However, if you make an undefined variable first, const number, and then assign a value later, that's a no-no. Const was not made for that. You're better off using var or let. When to use? How do you know when to declare a variable with const? Well, first off, when you want to declare a new array, a new object, a new function, or a new regular expression, okay? We'll run deeper with these 4 the further we go with JavaScript. So in this lesson alone, is 4 distinct concepts. It's very hard to cover them all, but I'm going to talk about them a little bit so you can sort of get the big picture. Objects and arrays. We're talking about them first. The const keyword does not define a constant value. That's the, when you look at it, I was like, oh, const probably short for constant, so it's a constant value. However, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. It is a constant reference to a value. Now, the more you code, the more this distinction will become bigger for you. So you can change the elements of a constant array. So you can change the 1 or 2 elements of an array or any index of an array, as well as the properties of an object, but you cannot reassign a value array. Okay, let me give you some examples because that might be a little bit too difficult to comprehend. Now we create a constant array. Here we declare a constant array, const cars, Ford, Volvo, Toyota. So this is a constant array. We can change an element. We can change Volvo, we can change Toyota, we can change Ford, or any element within an array for that matter, using the index. But if you want to reassign the whole array, now it will return an error. Okay, so it's a constant reference to a value, not a constant value. If it was a constant value, you would not be able to change Ford, Volvo, or Toyota for that matter. You would not be able to touch these. However, the fact that you are able to change them, meaning it is a constant reference, not a constant value. Let's talk more about block scope. Block scope is going to be very important. Const x equals to true, x becomes true naturally. We declare a variable, and then we assign a value. It has that value. Now, incoming curly brackets, we've created a block scope. Const x equals to false. And within the scope, x is false. Whatever happens to x, it will not contaminate, so to speak, or it will not mess with the x before and the x after. If you're just going to declare x up here and not down here, right? After the block scope is going to retain its value. It's not going to be affected by whatever happens between these two curly brackets. Redeclaring, okay? Now we go with var first, just so you can see, the difference between starting with var, which is more general, and starting with const, which is specialized. So var x equals to true, that's okay. The first block scope. Let x equals to true, that's okay too. So whatever happens in here, x is true. And then the second one, const x equals to true, and that's okay too. Okay, whatever happens within this block, it's not gonna affect anything outside of it. However, if you start with const x, which cannot be redeclared, cannot be reassigned, and has block scope, that's a different story. Let const x equals to true, this is redeclaring, it's not allowed. Const x equals to true again, no matter how many block scope you put it in, no matter how many places, it still remains that it cannot be reassigned or redeclared. In this case, it's very much like let. Now, let's go a little bit further and have const be redeclared in the same scope. And we're going to try, not with const alone, but with automatic declaration of variable, the var keyword, and the let keyword. So const x equals to true, redeclare again in a block scope, that's okay. X equals to true, that's not allowed. Var, not allowed as well. Let is not okay, and const, that's also not okay. So the moment you have const up here, and the moment you declare a variable and assign a variable with const, you cannot redeclare or reassign it by any means, regardless of scope, okay? You can think of these two as two separate situations. So const over here is already declared. No, 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 no. And now we're working with a different environment altogether. Const is now declared because this is a different environment. We can redeclare, we can reassign. It doesn't matter. But if we do it again, that's not allowed. So think of these as two parallel universes, if you will. Now, let's continue with a constant. Const number equals to, whoops, there's a spacing over there. Const number equals to 122. Now, if you redeclare this again, it's either going to give you an error or it's going to give you nothing. So I'm going to delete this, and let's work with the next example, const cars. And in this array, we have, Ford, we have Honda, and then we have Toyota as well. And you will see that we can change the individual elements of this array. So if I go cars index 1, which is Honda, and I change it to something like strawberry, which is doable. But I can also do cars.push, where I just push an additional element in, and I'm going to go with duplicate for document get element by ID, because we want to see how the result looks like. Task.innerHTML equals to cars. As you can see, we have Ford, strawberry, Toyota, and Ford one more time. Moving on to, since we already worked through changing the individual element,
what will happen if I change the whole thing? I'm gonna redeclare a constant. So cars, mango, strawberry, and we're gonna see if it works. And it doesn't. It gives us nothing, right? So redeclaring doesn't work. We're gonna move on to an object, okay? And I'm gonna change it to car instead of cars because we're just working with one object. Type of car is a Honda, and I'm gonna have the color of the car be white, and then car.color equals to yellow. You can change the individual elements, you just cannot redeclare the whole thing. Car.age equals to 10. So this is a new property that I'm adding in. So if you print it like that, it's not going to give you anything. So you do have to specify the property, color, car color and color age, yellow 10. Constant equals to number equals to 222. We're going to test the scope. Okay, we're going to test the scope just like we did with the let and the var keyword in the previous lesson. Now in here, number equals to 100, and I'm going to change car to number. And then we have 222 instead of 100.
That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for operators. Have a wonderful day. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101 Variables, one of the core foundation of any programming language. First off, with variables, let's do a little bit of get to know me. Variables are basically storage container for data. They can be declared in 4 ways. They can be declared automatically. So by default, without your help, through the var keyword, through the let keyword, and through the const keyword. Now, what does automatically means? These are declared by default when you first code them in, when you first write them in. For example, x equals to true. So we already have an x. And we already assigned it the value of true. And the same with y, we assigned it the character h. Z is the value, the evaluation of 5, because 2 plus 3 is an expression that evaluates into 5. So this is what it means when you just declare a variable as is without the usage of any keyword. Moving on to var. The var keyword was used in all of JavaScript from 1995 and onward. So when you write for old system or old browsers, they may not be able to support or have the latest version of JavaScript. Therefore, you should use a keyword that's been with JavaScript for the longest time to ensure that everything is working well, right? Like, coding is already hard enough. We don't want to make it even harder with any incompatibility issues. Variable x equals to true, variable y equals to age, variable z equals to 5 is the exact same thing over here. But now we use the var keyword. And you may think, what's the difference between, not using these keywords and using these keywords? As we explore on with variables, there are a lot of implications for use different types of keyword, and it has something to do with scope as well. But for now, let's just settle with the basics. Let and const. The keyword let and const were added in 2015, so unlike var, they may not ensure compatibility with older systems or older browsers. And you use them pretty much the same way as you would with var. Let x equals true, const x equals true. So now we have the syntax out of the way, right? The syntax part is the easiest part. When do we use const, let, or var? Always use const if the value should not be changed or the type should not be changed, okay? So you're using this for very strict values, like this value could not be changed under any circumstances. Only use let if you cannot use const. Only use var if you're working with old browsers. Now, these are just one of the few conditions that would dictate, when you can use certain keywords. Obviously, as you learn more, you'll come to discover that there's actually a lot of caveats. There are a lot of nuances based on whether or not you should use var, let, or const in a particular scenario. Identifiers, we're talking about variable names. Variables should have unique names. Now, since we're just talking, JavaScript 101, the whole naming a variable thing is very important in any programming language. But as you become a more advanced coder, you will learn a variety of ways that you should and should not name a variable. So I'm just telling you right now, it's a whole can of worms. The higher you go, but for now, with the basics, there are general rules that you must abide by, so you can ensure that everything's working well and it doesn't have any, sort of quirks. Identifiers, a variable names must only consist letters, digits, underscores, and the $sign. It can begin with a letter, a $sign, or an underscore. A variable name is also case sensitive, so an lowercase h and uppercase h are two different variables. Last but not least, a variable name cannot be a reserved words like func or let or var or any of the keywords that you'll be learning along with me. So you absolutely cannot use those, otherwise JavaScript will get confused and it will think that you're trying to execute something here, when in case you're not. One statement, many variable. This is possible through the use of a comma. If you pay attention to the one of the previous lessons, I did mention that with JavaScript, using the semicolon, you can actually put multiple expressions on one line separating by a semicolon. And you can do the same using a comma, but with declaring a lot of variables at once. So we have car age, car price, car on sale, and these are all on one line separated by a comma, and end. Remember, end by a semicolon. And it doesn't have to be on one line. You can just simply put them on each new line as long as you remember the comma and to end with a semicolon. Undefined. Now, what is that? Sometimes it's not possible to assign a value beforehand, especially if, it needs to be calculated or it needs to be taken from somewhere. So, for example, a user, and you couldn't possibly know what each user would input. So the best method is to have an undefined variable. And you can easily do this with var and const as well, not just let car price, and then end it with a semicolon. That's it. It works like that. Moving on to redeclaring. Now, redeclaring is basically writing the variable or declaring a variable one more time or any number of times after it has already been declared or assigned. If you redeclare a variable with the var keyword, it will not lose its value. Okay? But it's a whole different story with let or const. Let or const is a bit more specialized. var, it's more forgiving. So I have an example, var car name equals to Ford. And if I redeclare it again with car name, it is still going to be Ford if I print this out. Okay? However, if it's let or const, you're going to have a different value altogether, or you may have some errors that go with it. Last but not least, let's talk about this interesting topic, numbers or integers. Using quotations, we can transform an integer into a string and allow for concatenation. Concatenation is basically a fancy way of saying adding everything together, or like appending, right? But we're not adding numbers by any means. We're not adding arithmetic. This is concatenation for strings. Now, let's go with the first regular example. No quotations. 2 plus 3 equals 2. 5. It evaluates into 5. Now, if we all go by string, hello plus base plus world, all of that concatenated into hello world. Now, here's the interesting part. If you pair an integer with a string, the integer becomes a string, so they get added together just like you would with the second example up here. Now, if you make an integer a string by using quotation and you add it to some more integers, it will evaluate into a string for all three of them. So you would have 255. So it's not going to be 210, or it's not going to be 2 plus 5 plus 5. Okay, they will be all treated as string, and it's very interesting. You can experiment it around a little bit. You can try with, the Boolean values and the floats. We have div test. I'm going to duplicate this and make it test2 and test3. And then var car name. And we're going to give it a value, okay? Car name equals to Honda. And then document dot get element by ID test dot inner HTML car name. And then let's go one more time reassigning car name for document get element by ID. We're going to see whether or not car name retains the value of Honda or it has the new value of Ford. I'm going to do that for test 2 instead of test 1. It goes to car name, and let's test it out. So you can see Honda and then Ford, okay? It changes value. Moving on to variable x equals to 2 and then plus 10. But the 2 is a string, so we're going to print this out and see whether or not, it's 210 or like 12 or something. I'm going to mess around with this a little bit. So instead of integer, I'm going to make it a string. Okay, so it doesn't give us anything. There's an additional quotation over there. I'm going to delete that. And it should give us 210 like it did before. 210. And then let's try 4 plus 3. So 3 is a string, 4 is an integer. We get 43. Next up, let's try 4 plus 3, 7. And then hi there. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in, and I really appreciate you watching until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for Let. Have a wonderful day.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101. Today's lesson is about arithmetic, so you can expect addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, so on and so forth, and the different ways that we can apply arithmetic or math into our JavaScript. First off, with arithmetic operations, I have a few examples here. Let x equals to 20 plus 35, so this is addition, we know already. Let x equals to a plus b, so whatever a is, perhaps 5, 10, 20, add that to b for whatever b is. Let x equals to 20 plus 30 times a, whatever value a holds. So this is addition, adding variables and then an addition expression. Naturally, you can do the same with subtraction, multiplication, division, and finding the remainder using the modulus operator. All you need to do is replace the operator, addition, with, let's say, the subtraction symbol or the modulus symbol. You do not need to change the syntax whatsoever, so it's very neat and clean just like that. Moving on to incrementing and decrementing. What do I mean by incrementing? In this case is add up by 1, and decrementing is subtract by 1 or go back by 1. So if you have a number line, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Let me use 6, 7, and then 5, just as examples. So let's say variable x is 6. Incrementing variable x, it would be 7. Now it is already 7, right? Decrementing it would be 6. However, if you're already at 6 and you decrement, it would be 5. And if you increment by 5, you get 6. As simple as that. Let x equals to 10. X increments. Let y equals to x. Y will become 11, right? And the same goes with x equals to 12. X decrements. Let y equals to x. X is 11. Moving on to exponentiation. Let a equals to 2. B equals to a exponentiated by 2. So 2 exponentiated by 2 we get 4, right? 2 times 2. And you can achieve the same result using this method, math.pow for power. So x to the power of 2 or 4 to the power of 2. Next up to operator precedence. When you think precedence, think priority, think order. An operator precedent describes the order in which operations are performed. And this concept is very similar to in real life math as well. When you want to perform a bunch of calculations in order, right? Let's say you want to perform additions first before multiplication, you would use parentheses, right? The operations inside of the parentheses are computed first. In the case of no parentheses, and we have the same priority for all of the operators that are involved within an expression, the JavaScript would compute this left to right, okay? For example, let's x equals to 200 plus 150 times 3. Since there are no parentheses, it naturally goes 350 times 3. However, if you add a parenthesis, this goes first, right? But it already goes first, so you can do the same like this. Multiplications will be done first, and then addition second. The same goes with division and multiplication too. With no parentheses, 1, 2, 3. It goes. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Next lesson is going to be assignment, so remember to tune in and have a wonderful day. Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101. Today's lesson is going to be about assignment. If you remember correctly, it may sound very similar. Assignment is how you assign values to variables. First off, we'll be talking about the simple assignment operator. Let me get my pen. Simple assignment operator. Well, it assigns a value to a variable. Number to 1, sorry, not numbers. Character A, addition to 3 plus 3. Make no mistake that the simple assignment operator is not the same as mathematic equals to, right? Like if, let's say, 2 plus 2 equals to 4, that serves a different purpose than the simple assignment operator. Moving on to an addition assignment operator. This operator adds a value to a variable. Let x equals 12, x plus equals to 2. Instead of writing x equals to 12, x equals to x plus 2, which is a bit long, right? We have an alternative, the addition assignment operator, and you can do this with addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and so on and so forth, as I will show you in a bit. And aside from numbers, from numerals, you can do this with strings as well. Let greetings equals to hello, greetings plus equals to James. So when we print greetings, what we will get is hello James, right? Hello James. Subtraction assignment operator operates with the same logic that the addition assignment operator does. However, you do not get the luxury of removing strings, okay? You can add them by that method, but not remove them by the same method. The minus equals to operator subtracts a value from a variable. So x is 37, x minus equals to 1, x now is 36. And multiplication as well. It multiplies a variable. 55 multiplies by 10, x is now 550. Very simple, right? Exponentiation assignment operator. It raises a variable to the power of the operand. X equals to 33, and then 33 to the power of 5. X now is whatever value 33 to the power of 5 is. Division assignment operator. This operator divides a variable, just like addition, subtraction, multiplication. All you need is the same syntax. You simply change the operator that is before the assignment operator, okay? And the assignment operator that I'm mentioning is this equal sign right here. The remainder assignment operator, it assigns a remainder to a variable. X equals to 50, and then the remainder of it will be 5. Left shift assignment operator. This doesn't come into use early on, but it's good to know down the line, so you don't have to busy googling things while you code. This operator left shifts a variable, and the opposite of it, the right shift operator, right shifts a variable. So as you can see, we're working with the same syntax over here. Now to the AND assignment operator. This is something that you will be using when you become intermediate. Okay, so early on we're just dealing with the basics, addition, subtraction, and all that good stuff. But as we're moving on to higher and higher level, and or all of this bitwise operations will become useful. Now this operator operates on two operands and assigns the result to the variable. Let x equals to 10, and whatever value this gives off becomes x. And naturally we will experiment with this when I do the demonstration in Visual Studio Code. Or assignment operator, it does a bitwise OR operation, much like the AND operator. The logical AND assignment operator, this is for comparison, okay? If the first value is true, the second value is assigned to x. With OR, if the first value is false, the second value is assigned. So AND and OR, they are opposite of each other. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Next up, we're going to be talking about data types, okay? So remember to tune in and have a wonderful day.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach. Today's lesson with JavaScript 101. We're going to explore data types, okay? We have 8 data types that I'm going to mention in this lesson that is built into JavaScript, meaning the moment you put it in your syntax using the keywords, JavaScript understands and will work accordingly. We have string, which is text, number, integers, right? Big int or big integer, Boolean for true and false, undefined as in you don't have the value yet. It's like declaring a variable, but you have not assigned it any value, so that variable is undefined.
Null is basically empty. Okay, null is a little bit different from undefined. Null, you still have a value, but that value is empty, right? It's like having an empty box. Undefined is having no box at all. Simple and object, okay? I'm just going to mention these, but they're not, very common in use when you're just starting out. Now, alongside built-in data types, we have user-defined data types. These are the ones that you have to put in your own information, and you have to manually define them quite extensively, right? Otherwise, JavaScript doesn't know what to do with them because they're not built in. And the popular ones, you would have objects, arrays, and sets. Okay, there are many more, such as dates, map, interarrays, or integer arrays, float arrays, or just float decimal numbers, and many more. But just starting out, and even as you reach JavaScript mastery, and even in a lot of other languages like Python, objects, arrays, and sets, they're quite ubiquitous. Okay, you can't really do much without them. Now, I'm going to show you some examples of these datas. Numbers, they're whole numbers, naturally. Strings, text, any sort of text, you can make a number a string if you put them in between these two quotes, right? Double quotes or single quotes, depends on you. Booleans, true or false. And then this is an example of an object. An object has properties like real life objects would. If you have a cup of water, the property may be, the content of that cup, which is water. The color, which is colorless. Material may be glass, right? And here I have an object defining person. First name James, last name Brown. An object can be as extensive as you want it to be. There are no restrictions so far as long as you follow the syntax of having the pair of keyword and then value, okay? Right, property name and then value. Property name, value, that's it. And then dynamic. What do I mean by dynamic? JavaScript has dynamic types, meaning the same variable can hold many data types, unlike some languages that specifically require you to only hold a certain data type for a variable, right? So if you declare a variable a string, you can only assign strings and nothing else. But JavaScript is not like that at all. A single variable, a for example, can hold an integer, a character, a string, or a boolean, or just any values you want it to be, unless you use a keyword that declare a variable immutable, as in you cannot change value at a later date, but that's a different thing. Moving on to exponential notation. So this is just a convenient way for you to assign extra large or small numbers using scientific notation, as you can see here with E6 and E-4. Moving on to arrays, okay? Arrays are syntaxed with square brackets, and the items are separated by the comma, okay? And arrays are just, a list of items, unlike an object, which has properties and values. One thing to keep in mind that if you were to refer to the items of an array through indexes, the first item is not 1, it starts with 0. So if you count, right, or use methods that count the number of items in an array, 1, 2, 3, it's going to give you 3. But if you want to change the value of the first item, let's say, you must say index 0, 1, and 2. That is something that you do need to keep in mind. when you're working with arrays. Moving on to objects, a little bit of depth. Objects are written with curly braces. If you've noticed with our previous example, the properties are written as name and value pairs. Name, value, name, value, name, value. And I just want to mention that an object is not constrained by data type. Okay, you can put string, integer, float, boolean, whatever you need an object to have the property of is not constrained by data type whatsoever, since JavaScript is dynamic. Now, last but not least, with the type of operator. This operator returns the type of a variable or an expression, or the output of an expression, okay? Not necessarily the expression itself. Type of, this will give us null, because it's empty. We don't have anything in it. Empty will give us string, 45, string, integer, boolean, and float. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned. Have a wonderful day. Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101. Today's lesson is about function, or blocks of code that we can reuse. No need to, retype or redefine anything that we need to use more than once. Now, what is a function? A function is, as I've said, a block of code that does something. It's best that a function should only do one thing, so you don't get confused. Higher in production, it will be really complicated to debug if a function does, let's say, 2, 3, or 5 things at a time, right? It's better to have 5 separate functions that does that instead of one that does everything. It's sort of like a factory, a manufacturing line. Each employee does one thing, they do it very well, and the manufacturing line move as fast as it could, saving cost and time, right? If an employee were to do something, let's say 5, 6 different tasks, they would not achieve the same level of efficiency for the company, okay? And the same logic applies to your code, so keep that in mind. And one thing that I would like to approach is that a function is only executed when it is called or invoked. Okay, sorry, my PowerPoint is a bit slow. If you write a function and you just leave it be, it's not going to do anything. As a matter of fact, it's quite the same as just having some comments in your code. You have to call it somehow, be it by a button or an event that would trigger it. And this is the syntax of a function, okay? Function, my function, you have these parameters x and y, return x plus y. So when you call a function in this variable, as it did right here, you can pass in these parameters, which will be substituted over here, and the output of this is put into the call func variable. Okay, I try to draw an arrow, but I fail, so let's do this, okay? Why use a function? With functions, you can reuse blocks of code as much as you want without rewriting, right? Libraries, any programming languages with libraries, they also use functions extensively. That's how you get, the square root method or the sort or the filter, right? Importing libraries is just importing a bunch of functions in, so you don't need to define, basic things that should be natural. Now, let's move on to this operator. This operator calls the function. As I've mentioned, you need to call or invoke a function for it to be executed. Otherwise, it's just going to lay there. The wrong parameter will return an incorrect output. Without the operator, the function is returned instead. Now we have a function that converts Fahrenheit, that converts Fahrenheit, this parameter, into Celsius. We're going to return 5 divided by 9 times the parameter Fahrenheit, so whatever the user or us put in, minus 32. So let value to Celsius, we're passing in 45. We are converting 45 Fahrenheit into Celsius using the formula that's inputted into the body of the function. Okay? So let value to Celsius, there are no parameters whatsoever, but the function expects a parameter. It cannot work without the Fahrenheit parameter. So your Visual Studio Code, let's say, if you're using that, will give you an error. It will say, we were expecting a parameter here, but we don't find any. Like, can you give us, right? And without this two parenthesis operator, it's just going to give you back the function. Okay, it's going to give you back the name of the function. An interesting thing with function is that you can basically put them anywhere. Well, you can put them as variables, and you can, whenever you trigger these variables, you trigger the function as well. Let's say you are uncertain about the value of a variable, right? Or you want to calculate the value of a variable, or you want to calculate the value of a variable, as I've done here with conversion, right? Conversion doesn't have an output yet. You can assign a function as a value to the conversion, okay? And then you can maybe pass in a parameter, whichever value you'd like, and you'd have a whole new system of generating value for a variable, right? There's no need to know a variable value beforehand, because sometimes that is quite complicated. You know, what if the value that a variable holds depends on user input, right? If so, then manually assigning values to variable will simply not work. Within this lesson, I'm just going to introduce you to the concept of functions. In future lessons, as we advance further, I'm going to incorporate this, into a demonstration where you can see the pros and cons of having a function, as well as using a function to assign values to variables. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for the next lesson. See you next time. Hello everyone, welcome back to Tina Teach JavaScript 101 Objects. That's what we're going to be diving into today. And obviously we're going to start with what is an object. So an object, think of a real life object, right? A cup of water, a car, a house, a person, someone else's friend, so on and so forth. An object has properties, right? If I ask you to describe something, whatever information that you give me can serve as an object properties. So names, colors, size, width, height, maybe the date of birth as well, or their preferences, so on and so forth. Methods are also involved. Right. If I'm asking you, like, oh, what does a person like to do, right? Or what does she like to do, your friend? And you can say, oh, she loves hiking, she loves walking, running, jumping up and down, and those can serve as methods. Naturally, you can also pass in a function or a method that applies to a value or a bunch of parameters that you're going to pass in as a property of an object. You don't have to manually assign everything if you don't know the value of a property, let's say. Different objects can have the same methods, but perform at separate intervals. In real life, this would be maybe you have two friends and they love hiking, but the first one loves hiking in the morning, and the second one loves hiking at night, right? Same thing, but different time, separate intervals. In a sense, you can see objects as variables, but way, way more advanced and expanded. Since variables only hold a single value, objects can hold as much as you can put in there, as much as relevant, okay? Moving on to creating an object. We're just going to familiarize with the syntax. We're not delving into the coding or programming aspect just yet, because currently we can create an object, but we don't, have any means of utilizing it. And when we touch on that topic in the future, I will give you a demonstration, okay? Person, first name, Annie, age 10, favorite food, cherries, okay? Make no mistake, you can write the same thing on the same line like this, but that's obviously harder to read, so we're just going to separate it by new space, and don't forget the comma, okay? If you don't have the comma, it's going to be a whole new error. And moving on to Annie's friend, right? Annie's friend, this is another way of creating and assigning an object. You can have it empty and then add everything else in at a later date, right? It's basically the same thing, but you get to add in the properties much later if you'd like. First name, Mario, age 12, favorite fruit, mushroom, okay? They're the same thing. They operate the same way. Now, moving on to object methods. As I've mentioned, you can put a function as, in place of a fixed value. So full name function, return this. I want you to pay attention to the this keyword. This points to this, okay? So this just meaning, this whole object, this object, right? Dot first name plus, I'm gonna add spacing, otherwise the Annie and Goodworth is put together. And this last name, very straightforward. So the full name, in order to get the full name, add the first name of person and the last name of person with spacing in between. And then you would get Annie Goodworth. And that's one of the ways that you can utilize methods in objects. Last but not least, accessing the properties. And we're going to use index, but we're going to go with the property name, okay? Object name, property name, Annie friend, age. If you print this out, it's going to give us 12. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned. See you next time.